Okay, good morning. It's a pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this episode, this session by ELSA. And on behalf of the entire ELSA community, I welcome you. This is our first ELSA mental health talk. We hope there will be a long series of these talks. And this one is hosted by Shruti. Shruti is an ELSA Economics Honors 1996. Welcome, Shruti. Very happy to have you with us and very happy for you to host this. Shruti is a personnel counselor. She's a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. She uses her she uses her knowledge of NLP to reach the root cause of the challenges and belief patterns of people and helps bring about a change in their mindset and shift in their behavior. So this is really, Shruti, we know how persistent one has to be and how consistent with the same people to be able to bring about such a change. Really value you for that. Shruti is very emphatically passionate about empowering and equipping young generation with all the tools necessary to face the triggers of the modern age. And that's exactly what this particular session is about. So welcome, Shruti, and welcome to Dr. Samir and Kamna and all our speakers today. And I'll let Shruti take it from here. Thank you. And welcome to all the members. I think Bulbul has been able to join. So let me.
Yes, I have, but my video has been switched off.
Doesn't matter. Why don't you go and then give it to Shruti?
So I don't know what Smita's apologies for joining in late. And this is a very crucial session. So while, on mental health and social media, so while most of us enjoy staying connected on social media, excessive use can fuel anxiety, depression, isolation, FOMO. And, we are social beings and we need to be, kind of connected. So even while social media enables us to communicate and stay up to date, find new friends, join and promote with worthwhile causes, offer emotional support, find an outlet for creativity. And in fact, it's a source of valuable information. The negative aspects of social media are tremendous and, and which impact us, in terms of mental health. So in terms of inadequacy about life or even appearance, fear of missing out, FOMO, isolation in a lot of ways, depression with anxiety, cyberbullying, self-absorption, and so much more. And Shruti has been introduced by Smita, and I'm going to hand it over to Shruti for actually introducing and getting a very, very amazing panel on board. We've had Dr. Samir Kalani before in a lot of sessions, and he's much sought after by a lot of our students as well. And the idea being, of course, that if you're spending excessive time on social media, there would be certain, outbursts of other manifestations, which I think hopefully we are going to deconstruct. And who better than Shruti to actually moderate the session? Shruti is an ELSA 1996 batch Economics Honors, personal counselor, and neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, which is something she's going to use and hopefully in this session as well. And she uses that to reach the root cause of the challenges and the belief patterns of people and help to bring about a change in their mindset and a shift in the behavior. So Shruti, I'm handing it, and she's powerful. She's very, very passionate about empowerment and empowering and especially equipping the younger generation, with all the triggers that we are facing, including social media. So over to you, Shruti. Thank you so much for being on board, and I welcome you to, introduce our panelists, our experts for the session, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bulbul. Thank you for having me here and allowing me to moderate this ELSA session on mental health. Our theme for today's discussion is impact of social media on mental health, and we will delve into the usage and repercussions of social media in our lives and how to handle its overwhelming aspects in a balanced and healthy manner. I'm honored to welcome our two eminent experts for today. We have Dr. Sameer Kalani, who is a senior psychiatrist and center head of Sukoon. Sukoon is India's first super specialty hospital by Fortis Healthcare in Gurgaon and offers both inpatient and outpatient treatments for psychiatry, mental health, and de-addiction. He has been leading the field of neurosciences in repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation treatment, currently available in very few centers in India. His experiences span over a decade in working with emotional and behavioral difficulties across all age groups. He holds expertise in treating patients with anxiety disorder, social phobia, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, vascular dementia, anorexia, and major depressive disorder, amongst many other mental conditions. Our second speaker is Ms. Kamna Sareen, an MPhil in applied psychology. She is a consulting clinical psychologist, also associated with Sukoon. She takes keen interest in adolescents and young adults and emphasizes an integrative, dynamic, holistic approach to mental health. She specializes in a number of therapeutic modalities like cognitive behavior therapy, dialectic behavior therapy, motivational interviewing, and family systems theory, and works on a wide range of emotional, psychological, behavioral, and adjustment issues. Let me also introduce here our three ELSAs who will be, sharing their concerns and exploring the topic further with our experts. First, we have with us Kajol Tanaya, a graduate in English Honors from LSR 2021 batch. In the professional space, Kajol has worked with multiple startups like Prol Foods by Tiger Shroff in the field of marketing, communication, content development, and digital performance analysis. She has also assisted India's oldest NGO, CASA, in social media management, visual coverage of ground action, and content writing. Next is Arshia Bathla. She's just 19 years old, a student currently studying English literature at LSR. She is driven towards social impact in realms such as gender justice, mental health, and education. An outlook that led to her roles as research assistant and program coordinator with the Reliance Foundation, led by and Chennai Photo Benile. Having received her diploma in photography from Triveni Kala Sangam, she also works as a photographer at the intersection of visual storytelling in related areas. We also have Ms. Diksha Vashisht, a 20-year-old undergraduate student from LSR who works towards social welfare and is passionate in leading change-making conversations. She has founded Girl Up Fly, which is a social nonprofit youth-led club under the Girl Up campaign initiated by the United Nations Foundation. It is active in the fields of women empowerment, advocacy, fundraising, and awareness. Very happy to have all of you on board here and to make this discussion more meaningful and go into depth. So on behalf of all of us, I would now like to invite Dr. Sameer and Ms. Kamna to please start their presentation.
Thank you for having us here. I'm going to now start our presentation.
Today we are talking about the impact of social media on mental health. And as we start, I would like to thank everyone for giving us this opportunity. And I think we have got a good panel where we are talking. I think I'm the only medical person, the doctor, the psychiatrist. So what I will try and do in this presentation is, because this topic is mostly about psychology, I would like to talk about the medical part, the areas where we can diagnose and in fact treat disorders, and also we need to I think the approach today is about early detection, and in fact if we can go about prevention of disorders, I think that would be the ideal thing in mental health today. Talking about social media, we find that in this growing world, technology has become a very necessary source of communication. Special attention needs to be placed on the potential hazards of social media to our physical and mental health. What is mental health? We're talking about a WHO statement of definition. It says a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her abilities, can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Health focuses on an interdisciplinary model that looks at the interconnection between biology, psychology, and social environmental factors. So when we talk about mental health, when we talk about the mental illnesses, a common question which comes across to most of the practitioners by the clients is that what is the reason behind disturbances in the mental health? Or to the extent I can say, what are the reasons which contribute to creating a mental illness altogether? So there are usually three major factors which we quantify. We try and look at the biological, the psychological, and the environmental or the social factors. The biological factors means the physical health. For example, a growing brain, developmentally, we find that 21 to 25 years of age, the frontal areas of the brain, the frontal structures develop and they fully grow out. So when we talk about an age of 12, we talk about the age of 15, 17, even 19. We say that the client is growing. So that means the brain is growing. The frontal areas of the brain is growing. And the frontal lobe is, in fact, the major area which brings about control. It brings about development of principles, morality, and gives us an idea about what is right and wrong, how to balance our environment, how to balance our own self, how to balance our reactions and emotions towards the self. There is biological factors like genetic vulnerability. And here we are using the word vulnerability. So genetics is something which is not a bad thing, but the vulnerability gets transmitted across generations vertically as well as horizontally across siblings and extended families. So this vulnerability can be majorly in serotonin and dopaminergic receptors in the brain. And any exposure that the environment or the psychology will have will join together with this genetic vulnerability to create a disorder or a switch that has happened in serotonin or dopaminergic areas, the circuits in the brain. Third, obviously, is having some sort of chronic illness or an acute illness, for example, juvenile diabetes. So any changes that are going to happen in the hormones at an early age will affect the biological components in the brain, the body. I have a number of clients who have epilepsy and at an early age, and then they continue to have biological vulnerabilities towards various psychological and psychiatric disabilities. The psychological component, I think the clinical psychologists will probably talk about it much more in terms of how the personality forms. The personality, there is an arbitrary figure of, let's say, 18 years where we say that the personality is formed and fixed. But obviously, it starts at a very early age. There have been a number of twin studies, family studies, twins separated at a very early age, where we find that the environmental factors and biological factors have been independent with the psychological factors. And also they play a joint role. Psychological factors like self-esteem, social skills, coping to the, I can say, is the stress or the perception of the stress. That is mainly psychological. Third component is the environment, the family, the immediate environment, the social environment at a larger scale, the peer groups. We have talked a lot about peer pressures. We talk a lot about indirect pressures on the child, on the growing adult. There are groups, like, for example, ELSA is a group. So similarly, there are group affiliations, and we conform, each one of us try and conform to that social structure, play that particular role, especially in that particular environment. And environment largely. Last 2 years, 2.5 years, COVID has taught a lot of us a lot of things about the role of environment in a person's mental health, and especially on how it can participate in triggering the biological vulnerabilities, and due to the absence or inadequate coping on the psychological level, joining together to form a mental illness control. So this is the biopsychosocial model. And this is something we use to understand the mental illness as well as to try and explain to the caregivers and develop strategies around the treatment of it. Next, I would like to hand over to Kamna, and then she can take the rest of the slides. Okay.
So we're going to talk about social media usage. The recent years, we've seen a significant increase in the usage. It's changed the way we live our lives. Social media is almost everywhere. It's unavoidable, powerful, and it's here to stay. As per statistics, there are 3.78 billion social media users at the current moment. And that's almost up to 48% of the current world population. Social media differs in platforms. Now, each platforms offers something different depending on what the user needs. As per these statistics, there are different areas or platforms which are used. Now, in this day and age, we're slowly becoming social media addicts, whether it's scrolling our bottomless Facebook feeds while we're traveling or posting perfect brunch photos before eating. Social media has become inescapable. The latest statistics suggests that we spend 2 hours and 25 minutes per day on social media. That's a lot of time in our day. Two in every 5 social media user in India is between the ages of 12 to 29. This usage varies across different generations. Young adults continue to be the generation with the highest use, but it's slowly changing as adolescents too now have access to social media. We have children as young as 13-year-old now talking about likes, followers, and subscribers. Now, social media is not all bad, like Dr. Bulbul said. It's unique. The way the platforms interact with each other is unique to their customers. Not only do they provide for a platform, it helps us collaborate on ideas. It helps us communicate to our loved ones. It helps us share information in real time across borders, allowing a larger connectivity. It's almost become an extension of ourselves in all aspects from early years to now. Social media has penetrated into our lives so greatly that we can even have a visceral experience through virtual reality. The internet and social media is a key player in our day-to-day functioning, so much so that we're having this call over Zoom right now. Now, social media is not all bad. It's taken us from days of trunk calls to one-click video calls. But the impact of it is slightly challenging as it's persistent, it's pervasive, it's intrusive, selective, and available 24/7. We have come to a time where the number of likes determine our mood states. The day you have more likes or followers, we automatically become happy. We have lost ourselves in the world of 15-second reels to actually having 15 minutes real-time conversations. We talk about body positivity, yet we use filters on our pictures. Social media has penetrated deep into our minds. It's revolutionized the way we communicate. It's also a silent killer to our mental health. And somehow, even though we're all connected, a lot of people do report feeling more lonely. But the positive impact of it needs to be highlighted a little more. The intention of social media was very different when it first started. It has enabled connectivity, communications across continent without hassles. Now you can even call up your friend who's sitting across the globe at any time. It has allowed for expression to a larger and wider audience, and people of similar interests and experiences to connect seamlessly. We can post our artwork, you can post your music, you can post your articles and blogs. So it helps us to, in fact, express ourselves more freely. It brings in a lot of awareness and information from different resources with just one click. Imagine waiting for the newspaper to know what exactly happened the previous day, whereas now it's happening in one click. The network has increased twofold. Social media has the power to reach large communities and help in advocacy programs. In the recent, we have seen how communities have come together to advocate something important to them and also lead to everlasting change in social structures. During the COVID pandemic, we also saw how education could also happen online, and this opened a channel of education on the web, which a lot of people thought was not going to happen. Information has become extremely easy to access. No, long gone are the days that we needed to go to the library and find out what we needed to study and where we need to study. Now it's the search engine. Everything is optimized. However, like everything has two sides. Social media also has a negative side. Something that has such a everlasting change, something that has been with us, is with us 24/7, has to have some amount of impact on us. Now, when we talk about, the negative impact of social media, researchers are discovering that there are a lot more downsides on social media, particularly to our mental health. Some of the impact is that we bring in a false sense of belongingness. Now, here when I talk about it, each of you have created a community with the amount of followers, friends that you have connected with. Now, we have started having a heavy reliance on social media. We feel like we belong there. Whenever we're upset, whenever we're feeling a little uncertain, or we're feeling that I have nothing to do, let me just open the phone. What it actually does is it takes you away from the moment that you're in. It makes you belong to a virtual world where a lot of people might not show up, which is what creates this false sense of belongingness. Additionally, with this false sense of belongingness, we have feelings of uncertainty. As soon as you post that picture, you're waiting for that like, you're waiting for that comment. You're constantly waiting when that notification is going to come or when your phone is going to blink. So much so that we now have syndromes called the phantom vibration syndrome, where individuals feel like their phone is buzzing when it's actually not. This feeling of uncertainty drives us into anxiety. It takes us away from what we're doing in that moment. Ever find yourself thinking, I need to work, but looking at your phone that, wait, have I got a call? Have I got a message? I also want to bring about how one of the biggest impacts of social media is isolation and loneliness. We're connected through the virtual world, but when something important happens in our life, there aren't too many people that show up because we're all busy online. A lot of times we've seen families discussing how we're all together, but we're not really there because we're isolated in our online world. Loneliness creeps in whenever these false sense of belongingness and uncertainty come into us. Like Dr. Bulbul talked about, FOMO, fear of missing out. Now, when I talk about fear of missing out, this is not something that hasn't been there earlier. It's probably been there before, but has only been highlighted in the last 10 years. FOMO is essentially the potential feeling of missing out or fear of missing out of a potential event, connection, or community. Ever find yourself neck deep in work, but looking at stories and pictures of your friends on holiday or even going out without you? That's the fear, that's the feeling you get, that I'm missing out on something that's important. This happens to a lot of us where we feel like, why am I not there? Why am I not doing this? It questions us and questions why we aren't in that opportunity. Fear of missing out also leads to feelings of inadequacy. When I talk about feelings of inadequacy, there's something known as highlighting the reel or highlight reel, where social media only shows you the good parts, whereas you're comparing your life from behind the scenes, or in case behind the screen, where you feel inadequate, where you feel like you don't have enough friends, you aren't good enough. And this creates a narrative in the mind, along with, I wasn't invited. So the feeling of missing out. Another aspect of social media is self-absorption. We're constantly chasing social currency. When I talk about social currency, our self-worth is now based on the number of likes, followers. This is a product of consumption, and it's leading to an economy of attention. We're all looking for that attention through these thumbs ups, through these hearts, through all of this. We post again and again and again. Have you ever found yourself posting a picture that you thought was nice, or a video, and you saw that you haven't reached the average number of likes that you had, and then you take it off? That is what I mean by economy of attention, that your self-worth comes from how many people have liked your photo. We also see how social media has impacted procrastination. A lot of people have come in and talked about they just don't seem to have enough time, or saying, I just can't get it done. Social media enables procrastination. In fact, a lot of people have mentioned that social media is one of the main reasons why they procrastinate, because they always feel like something better is going to come their way, or they have to be online in order to maintain that connection or maintain that social media presence. We also have cyberbullying and cybercrime. Long before online bullying, we had bullying that was happening in school and colleges. However, now bullying is happening through a face of anonymity. You don't know who does it. And it creates an everlasting impact on the child's mind, or even an adult's mind. Cyberbullying has become one of the biggest problems and biggest negative impact of social media, in the form of trolls, hate comments, in the form of viral videos that actually make an individual question their existence on social media. Another problem or negative impact of social media is false information. We've all been targets to WhatsApp forwards, information on Twitter, hate messages, which propagate agenda of false information. One of the biggest problems is that we do see inauthentic information floating around social media. It's important that we authenticate the credible sources that is coming from it, and not believe everything that's coming on social media. Social media leads to impulsivity. With that being said, let's talk about what essentially social media does. As soon as you open your phone and you see something nice, or you see that like, or you see something interesting, it's a dopamine rush. A lot of times you catch yourself buying things you don't even need because, it just looks good. This is impulsivity, where you don't understand the consequences of your actions online. You do it and then you think about it later. Social media has been directly linked to low self-esteem. In fact, a study in 2019 reported that individuals with high social media usage correlated with low self-esteem. The longer they spent on social media, the lower the self-esteem was recorded. Now, this happens because what is online is not real offline. We tend to lose the authentic self on social media because we only want to show the good parts. We show ourselves through filters. We show ourselves through fancy pictures. We show ourselves always smiling. And whenever there is someone who comes out with the opposite side, there's a lot of trolling and hatred. This brings me to my third point about how body consciousness and body image disorders have started coming in through social media. There was a study that was done of an island in Fiji where there was no social media. There were no televisions. There was nothing. As soon as televisions were installed, the women of that village showed more body consciousness, and also showed more eating patterned behavior, where they all tried to strive for the ideal body image. I would now move to the psychiatric impact of social media. Dr. Kalani, please take over.
So thank you, Kamla. We have been talking about the psychological impact. We talked about what social media can do for us in terms of its advantages and we need to be aware of the disadvantages also. Now, there have been a number of studies, and I was seeing the literature, and if we go through the review articles, we find that there have been a few prospective studies which are not gathering data just to see what the impact of social media is, but to correlate the impact of social media with the other impacts. For example, in 2008 to 2018, there is a prospective study in United States of America where they did a 10-year study, and they found that there have been significant events, like, for example, any terrorist attack, or if there has been economic crash of the Wall Street, and whether there has been shootings out in the colleges or in the communities, schools, how those have impacted the mental health of children, adolescents, adults, elderly, and at the same time, there was another group in that same study which tried to see the parallel effects of social media pertaining to these events, as well as other social media components in these variety of age groups. So interestingly, it has been found that sleep disturbances, anxiety, depression, suicide, then self-harm, concerns about health anxiety, eating disorders, addiction, paranoia, especially in the Western world, then young children, talking about attention deficits, internet addiction, impressionable age for substance use, and then social withdrawal. These are the major overall effects that have been found directly because of the social media impact, after taking into consideration the effects in the timeline over those 10 years of a terrorist attack, of peer pressures in terms of studies, exams, economic decline, crash at the Wall Street. And one of the key indicators for the impact of social media is more than 2 hours of usage of social media. That threshold has come out very clearly in that study, that anything beyond 2 hours in a day of social media leads to a significant impact on all these areas which you just mentioned, but majorly at an exponential increase in suicide. This was one component which could not be explained even in the timeline, with major life events happening in the community and at times in individual groups in terms of the suicidality. Suddenly, the moment there was some components of the study which has been picked up by a variety of literature across the world, and there are few studies, especially which have come out of UK. I was reviewing that article, and it says is that having learned from this, they made a cohort and they made these groups where they checked social media usage by individuals for less than 1 hour, 1 hour to 3 hours per day, 3 hours to 5 hours per day, and more than 5 hours per day. So when they divided it up, because they suddenly realized that probably it's not just about the social media, it's also about the amount of usage of the social media. And here in the usage of social media, they are taking out the amount of time spent on video gaming. They have taken it out. And they have also taken out the amount of time spent on using internet for other purposes other than social media. So now, purely on social media, they found that this cutoff of 3 hours, anything less than 1 hour or 1 to 3 hours, did not contribute much to these variety of disorders. But anything beyond 3 hours, and especially when it went beyond 5 hours, there was an exponential increase of nearly 75% figures of suicidality. More than 25% increment every year in terms of the figures of depression. 50% increment every year in terms of figures of anxiety. So I think the interventions that need to be based also should take into account the amount of time that is being spent on social media every day. Interestingly, the smartphones today, or even the tablets or the internet, the devices give us a tentative timeline at the end of the day. You can have a timeline that how much time did you spend on the social media. In the neurochemical circuits, when we talk about the psychiatric impact, biologically what happens is social media or the connect through the technology goes through and creates an activation which goes through the substantia nigra in the brain, and it creates a dopamine rush in the brain. So there are two main neurochemicals. One is dopamine, second is serotonin. There is no satisfaction from the amount of time spent on the social media because the pleasure obtained is a very short-lived. It's like a high, and it can be compared to substance use in terms of dopamine hits. For serotonergic mechanisms, which is the healthy pattern, the growing brain needs a lot of serotonin. Dopamine is just a stress to the brain. So for the serotonergic pathways, we need the various sensations involved. We need touch, we need feel, we need audio, we need visual, we need spatial connect to that environment. So a group of 4 individuals sitting in a community, talking in real-time space, whereas all these 4 connecting via a Zoom call and connecting to each other and having conversation. The first component would be more serotonergic activation, and the second component would be partial serotonergic and majorly dopaminergic activation. So ultimately, at the end of the meeting and end of that fun session, if you can call it, there is more sense of activation and energization in the first group and more sense of exhaustion in the second group. So social media needs to be used as a tool like any other, and we need to contain the amount of time that we are spending.
Now, there are some signs to watch out for before, social media becomes overarching for us. If you're seeing someone who has excessive usage throughout the day, it's important for them to realize that social media has taken over. A decreased self-esteem is a sign to watch out from. If there's an important task like, say, a presentation to make or a meeting to show up from, being awfully distracted from that. Spending more time online than offline. The last 2 years have shown us that we can have meetings online, we can have birthday celebrations, we can even have weddings online. But what happens is that, like Sir very rightly said, each and every sensation needs to be activated in what we call spending time in face-to-face conversations, whereas online takes that away. Like having feelings of anxiety or depression, where you constantly find yourself feeling anxious about the notification or feeling like you've been left out, or feelings of inadequacy every time you open your phone. Any information that starts affecting your daily functioning. Like I mentioned, there is a lot of false information that floats around social media. We've seen in the last few years that information has actually caused fights. They've also caused riots, which have been completely false. When it starts affecting your daily functioning, it's important to question what information you're consuming. Being trolled or being bullied, any viral videos that you see. You may send a funny picture to your friend, but you end up seeing it that it's been trolled and sent to everyone else. And that brings you down into your mood state. This is a sign to watch out for, not just for you, but for your loved ones also. A lot of times, one of the biggest signs that we see is when we're trying to avoid difficult emotions or situations, we tend to look for our phones. Have you ever found yourself in a, let's say a group where you don't feel like you want to be there, or you feel like I'm getting anxious being in this group, you switch on your phone. But what essentially happens is, this is a vicious cycle. You switch on your phone, you get cut off from that group. And then when you have to talk in that group, you feel more anxious. So essentially, this is a sign that we need to watch out for. Now that we know the signs, it's also important to know that there are some tips you can follow. Most phones now come with limit setting. When I talk about limit setting, every phone now has this system where you can say that I'm only going to use this app for 30 minutes or 20 minutes. So it's extremely important where when you know something is taking up more of your time, you set boundaries. Be aware of the content that you are using. A lot of times we are following accounts that are not credible, they're not authentic. They also spew a lot of hatred. If you are aware of the content that you are using and consuming, you can actually feel better after using social media. Being mindful of language. Language is extremely important on social media. We need to be mindful about what we're saying, how we're saying, and what consequences happens. Disable media notification. It's important to cut off. Probably take a digital detox once in a while where you actually just switch off all the notifications, whether emails, Instagram, social media, not just for entertainment, but even information. During the COVID pandemic, when we were seeing a lot of, the notifications about the death rates, about the cases increasing, it put a lot of people into frenzy. As a psychologist, one of the most important thing I stressed during that time is to disable the notification, because like Sir suggested, this is inducing stress within us through our dopaminergic and serotonin receptors. Switching that notification off actually helps you sometimes. As we all have dental hygiene, we also have sleep hygiene. One of the biggest things that I stress is no social media or no phones on the bed. Most of us are horizontal while we're using our phones. 30 minutes before sleeping, it's important that you cut out all sort of information, especially from social media. What tends to happen is it has a lasting impression in your mind. And when you're trying to sleep, it keeps playing, replaying, and going again and again. When it's, let's say, triggering information that you see before sleeping, it puts you into a frenzy of what ifs, if then, how, and disturbs the sleep potentially. Turn off social media apps sometimes. It's important to take a social media break. Once you take a break and come back to it, you have a more clearer perspective of what you want to see and what you don't want to see. Exercise. Even though now we have smartphones and smartwatches that tell us how much we exercise, how many steps we've taken, exercise is not just important for your physical health, it's also important for your mental health. We have endorphins that are released in our brain, which actually make us feel good. You don't always have to post that post-workout selfie. It's not important. It's for your mind and your body that you're doing this, not for your friends. Mindfulness. I cannot stress this enough here. Social media takes us away from the moment that we're in. There's someone standing in front of you, but yet you're looking at your screen. If we become mindful of our situation, our environment, we wouldn't need to rely on the digital screen. It's important to also be sensitive and sensitize ourselves to others. You don't know what the other person is going through behind that screen. And when you post that, comment, or when you post that dislike, you don't know what you actually cause, because it's just a screen. You don't know what has happened through the day. A lot of times, people who've had a bad day turn to social media to feel good. But when they look at it, they see even more intriguing information and then get upset. And now I would like to take this over, and thank you so much for having us. And Shruti, would you be talking to us now with the questions? I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Sameer and Ms. Kamna. It was really very informative. And you have divided the whole presentation very lucidly, into benefits and the negative impacts. So, all I could say was like, if we pay attention to the positives and, restrict our usage to maybe 2 to 3 hours, and that will benefit us and not let the negative impact, influence us. So that is one takeaway, which was very clear. And other thing was the tips which you gave us were very practical. And, because the level we are all users of social media at different levels, and we have the impact on us, on our daily lives. We also see it in our children and in our friends and everybody. But where to stop, where to draw the line, and it's very important. And the things you told us, like sleep hygiene, is very important for all of us. Like if you even see a late night movie on Netflix, is actually told to be a dark movie centers. It's all, most of the serials and movies are dark. They are they give you, you get very anxious about them. And lately I also saw a movie late night, and the next morning I was so disturbed. The next day was just not so. Small things make so much of a difference. As an NLP practitioner, I would just like to say, tell everybody that instead of going to sleep with social media and seeing what is there on your Facebook pages and other Instagram, I would strongly recommend, a prayer or gratification or goal setting for the next day. Because our subconscious, when we are sleeping, our subconscious, whatever is the last thought, goes into our subconscious, and the next day we get up with that. So if we do a gratification prayer, just acknowledging all the good things which have happened, setting the goals for the next day. Okay, even a small thing, I have to get up early in the morning, say 5 o'clock. Even if you just tell your brain that, oh, tomorrow I'm going to get up early, it just affects you, and automatically you don't even need an alarm, and automatically you'll be surprised how your body follows your mind. So that is another thing. And exercise, when Ms. Kamna said about exercise, I would also like to add to it, exercise in the open, connect with the nature. That's very important. Go for morning walks, go for evening walks, it doesn't matter, but you must connect with the nature and be in the present moment. Don't take your phones along, don't take your have your mobiles on all the time. It's very important. It's like a detoxification when you're connecting with the nature, breathing in, walking. The connect with the nature is really the first step to connecting with your own self. And another thing was validation. With social media, we keep looking for validation from the outside world. It is basically, so like Dr. Samir and Kamna shared, that self-worth really suffers, self-esteem really suffers. So that is one thing we should be very, very careful about, not let it affect us. First we have to set the boundaries. We cannot let anything else affect us. We know ourselves the best, and not depend upon the outside world giving us the likes and the love hearts and everything. No, they don't matter. We should have our priorities right. We should know what matters and what does not matter. So that is one thing which, and this is all self-talk, being mindful and self-talk. What are the thoughts I'm getting? Questioning yourself, stopping yourself, correcting yourself. That, am I going in the negative loop or am I going in the positive loop? So the content also matters. When you're on social media, make sure the content, what you're watching, is it benefiting you or is it limiting you? So my suggestion to all the youngsters here would be this. Okay, now we'll have some question answers, and I'll invite Arsha to start with the questions she has.
Thank you so much. Before I ask my question, I'd definitely like to say that as a young person, like Shruti mentioned, I'm just 19. But definitely for us, being on our phone the whole day has become second nature. I personally started college online, so everything that we did was equated to being on the laptop, being on the phone. We connected with our classmates only through WhatsApp. And I think at a certain point in time, even for my parents, it became worrying, where is that separation between reality and WhatsApp chats with your classmates at all times? So I think definitely for me, there's been a lot of takeaways from this session. I think an important one is to let go of your phone half an hour before you sleep, because I think you're very right. There's a lot of information that we process, and I think that just overburdens our brain, and we should just relax before we sleep. I think that's really important. You're right. For my question would be that, of course, you're expert. So in your experience, have you noticed any kind of, instances where your patients have had to deal with the negative consequences of social media use or overuse, like especially in the 21st century? So have you noticed that? in your patients?
So let me answer that. Now, this is very interesting. When I was reading the study, which the one which I quoted, I was able to differentiate in my mind that in order to quantify the impact of what social media is doing to us, we need to be able to segregate the other factors around us. For example, you're working online, you're attending college, you're attending school, and your friendship or your emotional connect to the people around you in the class is really not there. There may be an intellectual connect, but not definitely not an emotional connect. Now, the question arises is yours not being able to step out of the house contributing to your anxiety, or not having a peer support structure in the physical space impacting it? So one of the classical ways in which I have found my clients, and which the way I have learned of what really happens, is when a client gets admitted with us. So we have a setup where we do get a lot of clients in crisis, and there is something happening in the external space, or when a client is under severe depression, no matter the age, like it can be a 14-year-old, it can be an 18, 28, 38, 85. So a client gets admitted, severe depression, suicidal thoughts, and about to go ahead with the intent of committing suicide. So now the client gets admitted. Next day, sleeps, has a good night's sleep, takes some medicines, and the medicine was already going on when the client was in the outpatient department. Takes a break from the environment, gets up next day morning, is very better, very much better. So whether it's a milieu effect in having come out of the stressful environment, the crisis environment, and for the next 2 days when we don't give them their mobile, versus if the mobile is available with the client right from the first step of entry into the hospital. Now suddenly I have two groups. One group, both of them are under depression. One group has mobile all the time available with them, with an understanding with the therapist that, okay, when the therapy session is going on, you will not use the mobile. But it is there. It is there on the table. It is lying on the bedside. And second group is when they don't have mobile for, let's say, the next 24 to 48 hours. There's a huge difference. There's a huge, meaningful, real difference in terms of the response of the brain to the intervention being done. So all of my clients that come to me, it is not just a prescription that I give them, but I need to sit down with them and try and understand what social media is doing to their lives, how they can help their family or themselves to take a break. When we say 2 hours a day of social media, it is a very small figure. 2 hours is nothing. If you look at the notifications that you get every day, it covers 2 hours. So in fact, you can't log into Instagram, you can't log into Snapchat, you can't really do anything if your just notifications are on. So 2 hours is not a big time, but what is the average time that the clients are using? I'm saying 2 hours, you're saying, okay, we'll do 2 hours. What is the actual time that you're using? So the studies overall globally have come to a figure of 9.5 hours. So now tell me, how can a client of mine reduce 9.5 hours to 2 hours a day? But it is the immediate need of their space. And I have seen this response if I bring down the phone. So after 48 hours of a gap, my client and myself, we do a mandwali. Chalo, kuch karte hain iska. So 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening, you're getting the phone. And that happens over the next 1 week, let's say. And my client is an excellent recovery after that, irrespective of the medicines that I give. In fact, the number of medicines required for depression goes down drastically. There are no sleeping pills needed. There are no anti-anxiety medicines required. If there is an anxiety happening and the client is able to connect to the immediate space, they are able to manage their anxiety. They don't need the phone for that, because the phone is only available between 11 to 12, or let's say 6 to 7. There is no phone at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So this is amazing. And this is what is the power of connecting to your space, connecting to the nature around you, connecting to the culture around you.
Right, that definitely makes it. Oh, sorry.
I think it's also depends on what you're watching. So a lot of times there is content available of all sorts on social media. Like Shruti just told us that you should be very mindful about what you're watching. So there is an effect called the Papageno effect or the copycat suicide, where when kids as young as 13 are now copying what is being shown on social media without understanding the consequences of it. So this negative impact is something that we need to highlight and create awareness that there needs to be trigger warnings before any sort of triggering information that we know can have a negative impact on our mental health. Additionally, social media also has good stuff on it, but we tend to focus on the negative. This is called a selective attentional bias. Whatever's bad, I'm going to see more of it. Whatever's good, okay, fine, I'll see it later. So knowing when to draw that boundary of what's helping you and what's actually not helping you is important.
Right. And like you said that, there's also some good on social media. On similar lines, are there any, let's say, psychiatric benefits of using social media that you've seen?
So psychiatrically, let's put it like this. A client of severe depression, let me use that example, because depression is probably the second leading illness right now in the world. Very soon it's going to be number one. So a client of severe depression has been feeling very suicidal, has these intrusive thoughts of suicide. And for every client of mine who voices suicidal ideas, I do ask them that how are you able to control yourself? How are you able to delay that thought? How are you able to postpone that urge to go through with it? So suddenly there are support groups in a way. So she says that he or she say that they posted something and there was a message in the WhatsApp group and there was something that came across and somebody just connected and said that, look, I also went through this and it's okay. So that immediate connect, because all of us do understand that for suicidality, for all the mental professions, we understand that the immediate connect is needed. For example, a lot of people, and especially a lot of real-time work is happening in terms of suicide prevention helplines. So what does the helpline do? It does that. So social media can also play a very strong role in helping prevent disasters, prevent crisis from happening. A client of mine was, and this happens in psychiatry, I can give you so many numerous examples. So client of mine was having a breakdown, and so she put a Instagram message, or what do you want to call it, story. It lasts for, let's say, 24 hours. So she immediately put a story that, help, my family is admitting me to a psychiatric hospital. She didn't use the word psychiatric hospital. You can imagine what she would have used. And help, and this is the place, and this doctor is there, and I don't know what is happening. And I was sitting in front of her. So we are across the table, and she has this phone, she does this. And two of her friends come rushing, they get the cops, and so all of us are sitting, and I was very happy. And she's like, Doc, I called the cops on you. And I'm like, oh, I'm very happy. I'm absolutely fine, because I'm not seeing the cops. I'm seeing those two friends who came rushing to help you out. So then all of us sat and we had a good conversation. And this conversation happening on the phone versus those guys actually landing up in the hospital and all of us having this conversation, it was amazing. And this client continued to take the treatment. She sent the cops back because her friends were there. And I asked the friends, why don't you stay with her? I would like to keep the client here with me for some time. Why don't one of you stay with her? And they gracefully did that. And that's the power of social media. How I actually started looking at stories in Instagram. So I realized Instagram stories have a lot of impact. So that was many years back. And so as a psychiatrist, and Professor Bulbul will tell you that in 10 years, it's been 10 years now that I've been using WhatsApp as one of the strongest tool in my connect to my clients. 2:00 in the night, this client of mine is telling me, I'm standing at Dholakwa. I said, what are you doing at Dholakwa? you are a doctor in one of the topmost premier institutes. You are doing a post-graduation. What are you doing there in the middle of the night? And she says, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going somewhere. I'll catch a bus at Dholakua and I don't know where I'm going. I says, I stay near Dholakua. Why don't you come over? This is conversation happening 2 o'clock in WhatsApp. He knew that if he messages, he's going to get a response from me. One of my clients says that she was having a panic attack in the night, and it was around, I think, 4:30 in the morning, and she messaged me, and I'm telling you what happens is I didn't see it at 4:30. I saw it around 7:30 when I woke up, switched on my phone and saw this, and I told her it's fine. And so she says, it's okay. I said, it's okay. She says, fine. I gave a emoji. So a lot of my clients now tell me that thumbs up emoji on WhatsApp coming from you when we give you an information helps us tide through a lot of stuff, because otherwise we would have ended up taking the SOS medicine that you prescribe. So your one thumbs up is powerful as equivalent as one medication. So this is good. Social media done in a manner which the individual, not the group, the individual understands how they are supposed to use it. It will work very well.
Yeah, very, very important point here, Dr. Sameer. You being a doctor and being in touch with your patients is obviously at a professional level. But what I would like to say to the young adults is be there for each other. So use social media to be there with each other 24 hours. Make them feel safe. Make them feel that they can reach out to somebody. There is somebody. So make that group. Don't let it be only a virtual world of friendship. Make that space for each other and be there when there is a need. And also encourage each other to ask for help. That is one thing I've seen. I have a teenage daughter, and somehow she's scared. She's like, she has lost hope somewhere that nobody will come to help me. Nobody's there, so she doesn't ask for help. So making that environment and making that, building that faith, at least between your friends, is very important. That I am there, I will be there, we will sort it out, don't give up, ask for help. So amazing incident you shared with our Dr. Sameer. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Kajol, are you ready with your questions? Yeah, please.
Yeah, let me first thank every one of you, because I think the insights that you have shared is definitely going to help a lot of youngsters who are watching this on Facebook or are on the meeting. So my question is particularly a bit on the commercial side of social media. As we all know, social media platforms are, commercial advertising spots, if not anything. And they make revenue through ads. Brands promote themselves on social media, they run ads, and that is how these social media platforms tend to make money. So most of the time what they do is they closely follow the user's behavior on the platform, and they try to force sell the sponsored items over there. So this is something that not everyone identifies, but there is this forced selling happening 24/7. After every 2-3 organic posts that comes up on your feed, there's a sponsored post. And I think this kind of enforces certain kind of behavior on youngsters. As Kamna shared, that there is an impulsivity and you end up buying things that you don't even need. So how do we identify this impulsive behavior happening within ourselves or in our environment, and how do we trap it? How should we stop ourselves from getting influenced by these sponsored posts and ads?
So I'll answer this one. Very nice question, because the online space, and especially social media, has changed. It is now a revenue generation model. Everything that we're seeing online is either a paid partnership or it's something that we're doing to influence one another. Hence the word in social media influencers. What's important to understand here is that you need to know the algorithm. There will always be an algorithm. So social media essentially runs on what we call artificial intelligence and consumer behavior. What happens is that whenever we're looking into something, so say for example, you decide I want to, get a watch or something, your algorithm picks it up and only feeds you information that you want. I would suggest here is where you distinguish what is a need and what is a want. Your need will last more than 24 hours up and go up to 48 hours, and you will understand the functionality of whether you really require that watch or not. Your want is based on that impulsive decision because it looks nice. I just want it. Maybe, because she has it, that's why I want it. Distinguishing between your need and your want is essential here. Another thing that I don't think we talked about here, and I think this is a great opportunity for me to talk about, is social media hygiene. Like I talked about dental hygiene, social media hygiene is also important. You need to clean up what is there, what you're following, what accounts you look at. Clearing your browsing history once a week at least stops you from following this algorithm. When I say hygiene, it also means following credible sources, or even on Instagram, you can mute those sponsored ads. So it's important to know how you're using your social media and how you're allowing it to influence you.
Yeah, that absolutely answers my question. And I think we should be maintaining that kind of hygiene every now and then, because I have heard this quote that if you are getting certain service or product for free, then realize that you are the product. So perhaps our data and our information is the product they leverage and make money. Well, there's another question that I'm coming to. So particularly we women, we are surrounded by a lot of threats when it comes to using social media to express ourselves. In terms of objectification, in terms of sexual harassment, blackmailing, that there might be some misusage of our images or our information. These kind of negative, negative catalysts, they end up leaving a deeper impact on our mental health. And always, it's just not right to ask someone, like for example, if I'm threatened by having certain misusage of my image or information, then if someone says me that you don't post images, you don't talk quote unquote too friendly to people, or you don't pose in certain way and post a picture, if we put certain restrictions on the person who is suffering, on the victim, then it doesn't seem like a valuable solution. It's problematic in itself. So how we at individual levels should identify, the threats on social media first, and second, as communities, as peers, how do we identify certain threats existing on social media around us, and without restricting our authentic expression, how can we utilize social media for the good?
Great question. So what social media essentially does is that we only post the good parts of ourselves, or we only want to post what we want to highlight in our lives. We're not posting what is authentic. We're not posting our authentic selves because we want to be perceived a certain way on that Instagram handle, right? One of the key questions here is, it is a choice-based approach. You choose what you want to post, right? Keeping that in mind, what you wouldn't do in your real-time space, you shouldn't also do on your online space, because the threat exists both in physical space as well as online space. And now that the laws are changing, cyber crimes are seeing a higher number of incidences and reports in India and across borders, right? One of the key aspects here is media literacy. Know what you post. Sometimes the language that we post, sometimes the pictures that we post, it's not to restrict your freedom of expression. If you won't do it in the physical space, what makes you say that you're going to do it in online space just because you're anonymous? No, that's not fair. I think one of the things that even Shruti can mention here is, whenever you see a hate comment, whenever you're seeing someone being trolled, bombard that place with positive messages, bombard that place with love, so that the person who's experiencing that can actually feel better. And that is something we can do as a community. A lot of times we've seen Twitter is a hate ground. Everyone is just posting their opinions and reviews. If you made one positive remark, it can actually bring a change in that hateful narrative. When we also talk about being too friendly or, posting certain inappropriate or objectionable pictures, I understand that the threat is very, very real. The threat is real because manipulation can happen twofold online behind the screen, right? What I would suggest is limit who you're showing this information to. You have the choice to know who's following you, who's not following you. If you don't trust that person offline, what makes you say you can trust that person online? So I think this is where you need to draw that boundary for yourself. And as a community, spread love, not hate.
Yeah, that's very important. I think we have also tried doing it many times when we see there's certain hate comment on anyone's image, or somebody's repulsively posting or something. We try to communicate love and try to communicate compassion and try to show them that there's a warm feeling and you don't have to be feeling so cold over social media and stuff. I definitely I'm going to preach this, and thanks so much for the insights. It helps.
Yeah, thank you, Kamna, for a very good guidance. I would also like to say that be the support, be like the candle. And so you're not even not only enlightening the space around you, but also showing and being the light for other people. So always be encouraging. There are many people out there trying to pull you down, but one positive comment from you can make a world of a difference for other people around you. That is okay. Now next is Diksha. Diksha, please go ahead with your questions.
Yeah, before shooting my questions, I would like to thank the professionals on board and of course the organizing committee of this event. I think it has been a very relevant conversation that we've been having. It didn't seem like an actual session or a talk by certain professionals. It was very relevant and something that we face on a regular basis. Social media has now actually become the reality, especially post-pandemic. So I think, it was a great conversation. And my biggest takeaway from the session was the fact that you become what you see. So be very conscious of the content that you consume online. From the past, I think 1 year, I have been also consciously trying to do that. I've been trying to restrict pages and unfollow pages or report certain content. Am I not audible?
No, you could be louder. You could put your mic a little louder. Yeah. I can't hear you at all, actually. Everybody's politely keeping quiet, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for bringing that out. Is it
now? No, Diksha, we still can't. Maybe you should speak in the microphone.
Is it now clear?
Yes, it's a little bit more clearer. Yes.
Okay. I'm really sorry. I won't take much of your time again, but yeah, thank you so much. It was a very relevant conversation. And just to repeat, my biggest takeaway was about, the content that you should consume on a regular basis, because you become what you see on a daily basis. So my question actually is that social media is a lot about the images, aesthetics, and your individual expression. And a lot of times people tend to stick to the general norms of the society, like what is the ideal body, how should one represent themselves or express themselves. So what do you suggest should be the way towards having a healthy relationship with social media as well as your individual expression?
Okay. It's important to understand here that no one body type or one shape fits all. Every body has a different function. We've come from body positivity to what we call body neutrality. It's important to question the functionality of your body right now. Is it functioning in a healthy way? that is more important than the aesthetics, than the idealization of the body type, or even the skin type nowadays, that skincare has become the new follow thing everywhere. Here I would also say that a personal thing that I do is that I often ask myself that, do I really need to follow this person based on how she looks or the aesthetics? Does it fit in my ecosystem, or is it just something good to look at? Is it really helping me, or is it actually pulling me down? There's a very thin line between healthy and obsessions, or being obsessive about something. When you realize it, when it's healthy, you realize that it's helping you out in some way or another. So when you're seeing that Instagram account who shows you good food and then you do actually want to eat a salad, yes, that's good. But when you're sitting and counting your calories because you want to reach that ideal body type is obsession. So drawing that boundary of what is helpful for me and what is not helpful for me. Also here, aesthetics, I understand everyone likes the aesthetics, but the aesthetics are also made in a way that they appeal to you. In reality, that's not really how it is. So when you're seeing that donut, it's probably glazed with Vaseline first and then taken a picture of. So when you go to eat Dunkin' Donuts, it's not the same. So do realize what you're seeing and what is this aesthetic that the media is putting out on you, and question it. A lot of people on social media now question this aesthetic. They question this, what we call this perfect image. So much so that this wedding that we just saw that bombarded the internet has suddenly become the ideal, right? And it's just the aesthetics that it is. It's just aesthetics. We don't know the emotions of what's happening. Question that sometimes. What's behind that screen?
Right. Yes, that does answer my question. And also, like, just to give an example of how social media basically distorts the reality and presents you with something which is ideal and something that you are supposed to run after. We see that in a lot of shaving cream ads or something, they don't ever portray body hair. Like, women are actually like shaving their bare hands. So that is also a way in which they present what is ideal, that women are not supposed to have body hair at all to begin with, but we do need to have razors as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
Any other questions anybody has? Okay, another thing which like, how can the government, there was a question in the chat, how can the governments or health leaders, how can they at policy level influence the impact of social media?
So there are a lot of workshops that are already going on about social media literacy, and I have attended a few, and I have found people from a variety of fields getting together and talking about social media and trying to understand. In fact, I think the first lecture was taken by a 17-year-old. So I think social media literacy should be the focus. We have been talking about mental health in terms of destigmatizing mental health. So I think that has worked very well. Last 2.5 years have been, I think, a real eye-opener in terms of the lockdown and then the impact of social media and how it entered everybody's life and how it became a major part of it. I think this is already people are working on it. I think every group, like for example, we are having this meeting today, so every group can have some role to play in this.
Yeah, actually Diksha also is associated with this Girl Up Fly Club for the youth, and she was telling me about the awareness and the advocacy programs that this group starts. Diksha, I would like to invite you to maybe share something about that. And also I just had an idea that about, we were talking about authenticity, right? So support groups or club groups like you can take out videos and post the authentic videos about body hair or the type of layers of makeup that people go through to look what they are looking. So, people will get the reality. Okay, this is not what I'm seeing. This is just a filter, or this is not the reality. So let them connect with the reality so that they know that what they're seeing is not what it is. It's not authentic. So that differentiation, I think as support groups, we can, help in that way too. It'll increase awareness and get people do a reality check. Before Diksha, Bulbul, you have your raised hand, ma'am. So can you?
Yeah, no. Diksha, please put what you want to say in the chat as well, because we can't hear you very well. In other groups, we had certain questions like the impact of Nilofer had this question that we see the impact on the next generation, on in fact, each of us with particular kind of media exposure. So, feeling of being cynical, quick anger issues, aggressiveness. I know there are no one size fits all, as Kamna said, solutions there. But do you have any tips to offer on that? Because we are also looking at preventive being the focus here, because we all know all these issues, but how do we deal with it? I know it's very individual, but some kind of, like a yardstick, if you can give us, if there is one. Yes. Samir or Kamna, any of you, yes.
Yeah. So I think the biggest strength in our scenario in our continent is the culture that we have, the family structure that we have. So I went to watch a movie and I was very seriously impacted with it. And for the next 2 days, I was sitting with my friends and peers and especially my family members and talking about it. There was nothing else to talk about for the next 2 days. And I went about talking about it, and each member of the family, especially the oldest member of the family, came out with their experiences in those times which the movie was portraying. It was a historical movie, and they were portraying their times, real events that they had observed and their experience with it, and they helped me cope with it. So I think the fallback that all of us have, where the Eastern culture and the Western culture, the biggest advantage we have in terms of better outcomes, in terms of psychiatric disorders, better outcomes in terms of psychological issues, is our culture. And I think we must focus on that. And universities and colleges and now schools have been promoting peer groups, support peer groups. So that really works.
Another thing that I would suggest, especially now that I mentioned that children as young as 13 and 10 now have access to social media, as a community, it's very important for us, especially like, I just saw the question on the side, for younger kids to actually monitor what they're seeing, because there's so much information available on the web. As parents, as educators, even as mentors, we should monitor what they're seeing and also allow them to know that their expectations of what they're seeing is not going to be met. Having that break, that what is am I expecting my life to look like that because I'm seeing everyone going on holiday, I'm seeing people fighting in my video games, making them realize that this is a virtual world and emphasizing the virtuality of it as opposed to the reality. Talking about that to your child, talking about it to your adolescent is extremely important. When we also talk about anger, a lot of times there's anger that is shown through passive aggression on social media in the form of how we have these emojis which are angry and so on and so forth. Allowing for actual human emotional experience is extremely important, not just for children but for adults also. Expressing your emotions in a real-time situation is more important than just sending that emoji. Even though for sir it works out, thumbs up works out for his client, sometimes calling will also help and having that chat.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. Also, there's a question, how can the corporates and educational institutions, make concrete, how can they incentivize students and their employees to contact mental experts?
This question is from Vinita Sethi. Would she like to add to that?
No, my whole issue is that, it's all very well done. We can have one of an event and create awareness. And especially after COVID, when all of us are working, still continue to work from home and are exposed to so many threats that we were not even aware of earlier. how is it that we can have our HR become more proactive? I mean, I don't even know if colleges have enough counselors and even a data of who to contact as a mental health expert if a student comes to them and says, look, I feel intimidated. So what can you as an expert guide the colleges or corporates to do? And should there be a proactive policy to tell employees every 6 months go and give feedback to us? Something, I mean, what is missing in our system?
So ever since the pandemic, what we've seen is that there's been a lot of corporate, corporate stress on mental health. There's been what we call the great resignation these pandemic years, because everyone got tired of what was happening online. And it's essential for us for HR to talk about mental health as much as physical health. We've also seen mental health leaves come into play now, and that helps us talk about and raise awareness. There is a lot of features in, let's say, the online space where you can flag or report in appropriate language. So a lot of our conversation is language based, it's text based. Organizations do have and platforms do have the ability to flag information or even words that are threatening or threatful. So there is a reporting mechanism. When we talk about corporate organizations and an incentive program, a lot of times people shy away from seeking help, right? And it's only when the HR notices that there is absenteeism, there's procrastination work, do they genuinely go and ask that, do you need help? Or do you ask for help? Whereas I feel like every 3 months, an organization should allow and should give access to free mental health, or if not free mental health, just have a mental health talk or something that makes people and employees believe that this is a place of belongingness for me. I can share what I want. And more so in the digital space right now, since we're all working from home, it's actually caused us, in the beginning, we all enjoyed it because it was from the comforts of our bed, but we missed that 15-minute lunch break. We missed that 5 minutes chai outside. And taking those breaks right now and talking about your mental health with each other should also be okay in a corporate setup. It's not a climb the ladder anymore.
Kamna, I just have one question. So if you were there, Kamna, as a health expert, what would you tell ELSA to do to make sure that students connect with you regularly?
So one, as a college, it's important to have multiple counselors available. That would be one thing. For the students, have different topics, or let's say have mental health awareness programs or weeks where you talk about one topic where it's free for everyone to come and join in. It's like an evening time, and have smaller groups, a group with, say, like a focused group, that today we're going to talk about how to manage stress or how we're going to manage something else, where a moderator or say a counselor is talking about things, not picking up one person. It's a more free talk available to all. And that would be one thing that we can start doing at a community level.
I'll share an example.
What you're saying is with anonymity, so that, it's not focused on any one person, and there's a little, there's this ambiguity about who you're addressing. Yeah. Sorry, Samir.
Yeah. No, so I'll share an example. So when the Medical Council of India was dissolved and this NMC bill came in, and the NMC, the National Medical Council, came into force. So there was a lot of focus on mentorship because there has been a lot of talk about and real issues of depression and suicidality in mental health medical professionals, especially in the college level and post-graduation level. So the mentorship program came into force, and it's been now more than 3 years now it's in force. And interestingly, not a single one of the mentor is a psychologist. The criteria for being a mentor is that there is empathy, there is an attempt to connect to the individual. There are, and it's a voluntary program. It's not something that randomly any department or any associate or an assistant professor is targeted and said that you become a mentor for this person or that person. And with time, obviously there are ways to promote it, but then with time, what has happened is this mentorship program is strengthened in a sense that one, let's say, an associate professor of biochemistry department is a first year subject in a medical course and is mentoring an intern who's a fifth year MBBS student, is finished an internship, and they are connecting, and there is no need to write up a report there. There is certain number of sessions to be happened over a period of, let's say, 12 months. And it happens and it works out very well. So last 2.5, 3 years, medical colleges have shown a positive response to this mentorship program. So I think institutes can have their own thing, or bigger bodies can come up with ideas.
Yeah. I have an idea to share. Vinita, I really feel that one-to-one connect is also very important. So one thing is having these webinars and programs for children in general. But I think if you float a questionnaire, maybe a corporate or even for students and all, say every 3 months, float a questionnaire just to know their happiness index or their satisfaction index. General questions like how happy are you, or if you're not so happy, is there something bothering you, is there something this, they just might want to reveal their identity, or they might not. That's okay. At least the organization will know that what is the environment like. Is there something, if the certain policy or certain rules of the organization is creating a rift, then the HR should be proactive to work on it. And the other thing is that questionnaire will also should also have that person's should give access to that person, that in case you want to call up, please call up this number. We are there to help you. If you want to come and personally meet us, it will be anonymous. But so one-to-one reaching out, I think, will have a bigger impact than generally just having webinars and programs, which people go attend and then they forget about it. But if the person is in a space where he's actually looking for help, and suddenly this questionnaire comes into his hand, he knows where to go, where to reach, and at least express himself. That expression itself will will make a lot of difference. It will put them at peace. So I think individuals.
I'll share an example with this. So in 2008, we did a huge camp with Mumbai Police, and I was in Bombay that time. And the questionnaires were sent across to all the policemen, right from the superintendent of police to the constable. And so we got, let's say, a 500 page. So we sent a single page, because from psychiatry we talked about perceived stress and we talked about substance use. So this 2-page questionnaire, and it came back with an ideal feedback. So every cop that filled this form was so scared and petrified that what's going to happen to their career. And so this form comes with everything is fine, excellent, excellent, excellent. And so then we realized that we had to sit down with the 5,000 cops and talk to each one of them and take 20 minutes to explain to them that it's not going on their career, it's not going to affect their career, and it's just something which we're talking to them about it. And then we got huge data. We got huge data of alcohol use, of tobacco dependence, of suicidal thoughts, of sleep deprivation, of heightened sense of anxiety, low self-esteem, that how can a cop have anxiety, what will it say about their strength. So that experience opened all of us who were working was in the field at that time, the 5 medical colleges there in Bombay, and all the faculty and all the practitioners in mental health. We realized that it's the individual connect that matters. That's why when the NMC came up with this mentorship program for medical college, they did not talk about across the board. They talked about individual doctor and individual student. And they talked about connecting that individual to one mentor and then working through it. So that was something I thought I'd share.
Thank you, very useful. And if we can just even say in a questionnaire, if you all can send us something and you can find our happiness index, that in itself creates an awareness on how whatever happy we are on or with social media, for example. Thank you.
It's also an eye opener on how we are all in the same boat, and all of us have some mental health issue or the other. At this point, I want to invite our youngest EC member of ELSA, Anya. She's put the question in, but I'd request her to speak that out.
Hi,
She's passed out of college very recently and is a young graduate and a member of the ELSA EC. Yes,
Hello.
Anya.
Hi, I just wanted to know if you can all hear me. I'm a little sick, so possible that you can't hear me. Okay, awesome. First of all, I think thank you so much for enlightening us with all of these answers, and also I think very important questions asked, right? As someone who's young and as someone who's deeply impacted and invested in social media, I think it was important to know all of those things. I think Arshia, or one of you asked a question about, how do you not get affected by social media that much? And I think to which you both responded, but I have a follow-up or a slightly different question. Today, I think what we see a lot of times, of course, on the basis of who we follow, is so much communal hate, so much hate on the basis of your caste, class, where you come from, be it your country, be it your city, which religion you follow. And I think after a point of time, it really starts impacting you, even if it's not direct hate towards you, but everything that's happening online. And a lot of it is also not in your control, because a lot of them are just bots, right? Made by IT cells, or those are people who you actually don't know if they really believe in this, because the hate that they send you starts from, of course, talking about your opinions, which goes down to, threats, and really bad threats, life threatening threats. So I just want to understand that if someone, say for example, someone like me who's public about her or vocal about her opinions, and you get so much constant targeted hate, how do you deal with that? Because I don't want to stop speaking because I'm getting hate, which means I'm definitely saying something that's a lot of people might not agree with. But how to also manage this and the other content that you constantly consume, right? Seeing the communal hate grow online, seeing the coverage that's happening, it really, I think, especially for me, I think I really get affected by it.
So let me share an example so you'll understand what I'm saying. There can be a lot of strategies in which you can deal with it. When I entered college, I remember this was way back, way back. So that time there was a lot of ragging that used to happen, and that was a norm. And the people who would do the ragging would be very proud of the fact that they are doing that to promote the the freshers' mental health, the personality, like they used to say. Next year, when we became a senior and the freshers entered, so all our friends, we were sitting, and so I asked one of my friends that, so he or she was also going through the same pattern with the fresher, and so I asked them, are we relating to what we are doing today? Because the last 1 year has been hell for us, and are we going to do the same thing? So our batch, we decided that we are not going to do any ragging. Let our seniors who ragged us, let them do what they want, because we are not out here to change the community, but at least we can do a lot of work on an individual level. Now there were 8 of us in the hostel of, let's say, 150, decided not to do ragging. Suddenly we provided a safe space for the freshers who were there. And we helped the freshers deal with whatever was being dished out there by sharing our experience. That this is what we went through in the last 1 year, and this is what we have been doing, and so this is what it is. Now in post-graduation, I saw the same thing happening when I was doing my MD, and I saw the various departments, freshers, PGs joining, and the second and third years and the seniors doing the same thing. And then we had the same conversation there. So over the years, all of us want to do a lot in terms of any wrong that is happening around us. But can we contribute, can we at least decide to do something right by us, or what we can do or not do in the immediate environment space? And that will bring about a change. Start individually, it'll move beyond the community. And then obviously there are so many strategies.
I think one of the important thing here is that whenever we're talking about, the hate messages that come, we tend to target the author at some point. It becomes personal. It's not the content. It's not what we're trying to raise awareness for. We tend to become more personal, and drawing that boundary when it's becoming personal, it's very important to know when to delete, block, and hide. If you see it taking a toll on your mental health in terms of making you feel more emotional than you would, it's important that you protect yourself. Even though sometimes what happens is there is information that comes out that, like you mentioned, false information. This happens because the social media is designed in order to create an echo chamber. That is, what you want to hear, you hear all the time. It's extremely important that you look at the other perspective as well. Open yourself to different opinions, which means that you don't get sucked into the information that you're getting and refute any false claims. You refute any non-credible sources of information. As soon as you see that, whatever hate that you're seeing online is affecting your daily functioning in terms of not wanting to get up in the morning or feeling like, you're feeling threatened, talk to a mental health expert, talk to a friend, talk to a family member. If you think that it's going beyond and it's causing problems in your online space, report. There are a lot of ways to report this hate that's happening. And the more mindful you become of your language, it helps you dealing with your emotions also. Sometimes it's important to know that you don't always have to be aggressive. You can be assertive, but not aggressive. And knowing where to draw that line is very important. And switching off. Switching off is also one of the ways that you can help yourself.
I would also like to add here. So, Anya, what we do is in our impulse, when we are very emotional, we tend to write, say in Twitter also. Why do we get so much hate, right? Because people are impulsive and they just want to express without even knowing what they are saying, the language they are using, and what effect it's going to have on others. It can be you, it can be me. The same is with other people around. So even if there's one is, don't take it personally. They may be in a different frame of mind when they're writing that that mail, right? Then also what you are writing is, you have to be very careful. So I would suggest, first, don't just go and write it directly on the social media, write it on a journal, okay? Then think over it, the form, reframe it, and then write it on the social, then make it public. This will really help you. It has helped me a lot. Personally, I was very outspoken. I think all ELSA writes are. We have our own mind and we are, we speak our mind out. So important to write it down, think from the other perspective, like Kamna said, soothen it out. Remove the aggressiveness from it, remove the sharp edges, and then put it across. That is important. Okay, so here, I think we have a very good thing here, which a thing to say, which I said: protect yourself, delete, block, and hide. You should know what to do and be mindful. So I think this is the biggest takeaway in social media. We have to be mindful of what we take and what we don't. So thank you everybody for your participation. It has been a lovely session, very interactive, lots of insights. Thank you, Dr. Samir and Kamna, for being here. And I will invite Dr. Bulbul to please extend the vote of thanks.
So in today's world, many of us rely on so many social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, what have you. While each has its benefits, it's important to remember that social media can never be a replacement to real human connection. It requires a person-to-person, in-person contact with others to trigger those hormones that alleviate stress, make us happier, healthier, and more positive. So ironically, technology that's designed to bring people closer together is spending too much time engaging with social media can actually make us feel lonely, isolated, exacerbate mental health, anxiety, depression, and so many other things. Thank you for this amazing session, and so crucial a session, and amazing questions touching the myriad dimensions of the theme so a theme which is so encompassing, which relates to all of us. The session so succinctly deconstructed the theme, including knowing the warning signs, knowing the algorithms, as Kamna put it, the preventive dimension, social media, hygiene, literacy being the focus, as Samir put it as well. But finally, it comes down to our individual of thus far and no further. I mean, where do we stop, and we bring it in. My warm, absolutely warm appreciation, huge appreciation for Sukoon Health, and specifically Dr. Samir Kalani and Ms. Kamna Sareen. It was an amazing session, the psychiatric and the clinical psychologist version. The moderated discussion from Kajol. Kajol, we also have to thank for other dimensions, who interestingly actually designed the backdrop, but she didn't have the backdrop, didn't manage to put it herself. Arshia and Diksha, amazing questions. And others, Vinita, Anya and others, and our entire EC team. I want to acknowledge here Anya, who's not well, and she's sitting here, Ashima Agarwal, Ashima Arora, Dilruba, and I'm saying this in alphabetical order, Kalpana, Smita, Sudha, Sukhi, who's the backbone here, who's been, working on it. Kalpana, who's been through this entire process with us in, the dry runs and stuff that we wanted to do, and we should really have done it. Shivani, Uttara, and Suchitra. And last but not the least, of course, our very own ELSA, Shruti Agarwal, who so well wove everything together. Thank you all. Bless you. And we'll end the session. Namaskar.
Thank you.